ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। So in the third chapter we have seen that action is inevitable, everybody has to act. The choice is in how to act. And in that context we are seeing some of these principles of Karma Yoga. First one we saw, Bhagavan said in the third chapter, Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam, perform your obligatory duties diligently. So Karma Yoga is not about leaving the duties and doing something else in the name of social service. One of the most important trainings of human mind and a spiritual discipline, the objective of a spiritual discipline is steadfastness in what should be done and avoiding what should not be done. Very simple thing in life it is. That what ought to be done ought to be done, and what should be avoided should be avoided. But that is where the human mind starts playing the games and the tricks. What we should do, we are not able to do. What we should not do, we are not able to stop. So the very first point in Karma Yoga is this, when he says that Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam, I must perform my obligatory duties and perform it diligently. Not dragging myself through it, laborious, and don't like it. Perform it efficiently, diligently, cheerfully. So that Niyata Karma, even if this one quarter of the Gita, Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam, if this we start following in our life, our session is called Gita in Practice. So I list down saying, what are the things that are my duty which I should do? A lot of our time goes in unnecessary other things, and the main duty which is supposed to be done, that is ignored. That builds a lot of unconscious pressure in the mind. So Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam, perform the daily duties and obligatory duty, occasional duties. These two come together to form our obligatory duties. And the beauty is a person who follows duties will always be in the mode of giving, will always be in a proactive mode. Person who doesn't follow the concept of duty will always look for excuses and will always be in a mode of expecting. So duties help us to keep our mind very, very focused and balanced. And the very question that somebody else is not doing the duty becomes irrelevant to me. Because by my doing that duty, I am disciplining my mind first. That's what my need is. And in the case of duty, there are no likes and dislikes. So I get that mastery over the mind, that likes and dislikes I learn to transcend. Now I have to study as a student, as a householder, I must take care of the family. I have duties towards the society, towards the nation. I must do it. And when I train myself to do it, lovingly, cheerfully, I am rising above likes and dislikes. Very easy it is to sway. In the third chapter, further it will come that what prevents us from following Karma Yoga is our own strong Raga and Dvesha. And Bhagavan calls these two as daylight robbers. That in the daylight they come and rob away your peace. Because we are habituated to follow Raga and Dvesha, likes and dislikes. What I like, that I will do. What I don't like, I will avoid. In duty, likes and dislikes don't matter. I have to do it. Person who trains oneself to do the duty will remain focused, will grow very fast. So first point itself is perform your obligatory duties diligently, cheerfully, efficiently. Dedicated to a higher cause, highest being God. Now this sense of dedication is what we saw yesterday as the Yajna Bhavana or the spirit of Yajna. To go little deeper in this context of karma, see, every karma that we do gives us temporary results. And there are two types of results. One is a visible result, another is an invisible result. So the visible result is something which I experience through the body, mind and intellect. So suppose I drink a cup of coffee, somebody gives me a cup of coffee, and then that action, so it will give me pleasure at the body level. If somebody near and dear one has given it to me, I will have joy. And if I had a desire that I must have coffee, then I feel satisfaction that yes, I have had coffee. This is the visible result. But there is an invisible result, which is an impression on the mind, which we call as a vasana. Now that impression will be favorable or unfavorable. So if I have made that, if I love that coffee and that impression is formed that coffee is equal to happiness, but next time there will be, that impression will give rise to desire, desire will give rise to thought, thought will make me act. So if you go to see, every karma is sowing the seeds of further karma. Now that way, this cycle of karma is never ending. Because when I am doing karma because of past impressions, and while I am doing karma, I am creating new impression, which will again prompt me to do new karma. So now, where is the end? This sense of dedication comes there. That when I do it with a sense of dedication to a higher purpose, that's what was said yesterday, that tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. That when I do it only for selfish purposes, then this theory of karma applies, that it will give rise to an impression. But when I am doing it with a selfless purpose, as we saw in the 9th verse, yajñārthāt karmaṇo yatra, any action done apart from this bhavana of yajna, meaning apart from the sense of dedication, will bind. Lokoyam karma bandhana. Karma bandhan is this, that every karma sows further seeds which makes me act again. So I become restless. Because every impression gives rise to a desire, and one desire to fulfill, sometimes the mind is so disturbed. So many thoughts are there. Now imagine countless desires like that. How restless the mind should be. So that is karma bandhan. Now how to get out of that? Because I can't sit quietly, that we saw earlier. Action has to be done. And if I do action, then I am creating new bondage. So he says, tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. He says, you act for the supreme, act for a higher purpose, where the action is dedicated not for my pleasure, not because I want to do it, not to strengthen my ego, but that very cause that I hold dear, for that. Maybe for the country, maybe for the community, maybe for a social cause, or any cause of education, cause of medicine, any cause. So the moment I dedicate myself and all actions are dedicated to that cause, this selfishness goes away. Because that cause is more important, I am less important. In that sense, a person who starts acting, so even when I am doing actions in my family, I can do it with the idea that I must be praised, I am doing so much, my contribution is this much, or I can do it genuinely with the love for the family, and that is my joy. So slowly, the self-will, self-importance reduces. And that action doesn't leave impression which will strengthen the ego, but it will still leave an impression which is a sattvic impression, which will help a person to evolve, seek more satsang, be more quiet, and get out of this cycle of karma. So here, when he says dedicate the actions to a higher cause, one can identify any higher cause in one's life. And highest being God, because there are no limits there. It's infinite, absolute. So that's what was said, that is the meaning of the word yajna, that we come together for a selfless, noble cause, sinking our own differences, work together. You see, teamwork is another beautiful method to dissolve the ego. And we have that opportunity to dissolve that ego in a family, in a company, in a society, everywhere. But what is important is that vision. One of our difficulties is that we are not able to work as a team. Individually one is brilliant, but as a team one collapses. Why? Because the idea is that I am important, then that teamwork will not happen. In the team everybody must have that vision that the cause is important. Then teamwork will happen. Very simple example of that, again I am giving you from our culture only. You can see it in daily life, lots of places. So when there is a fight between Pandavas and Kauravas, and Pandavas have been exiled, and this Duryodhan goes to find them, and he wants to finish them in the forest only. He misbehaves with certain people in the forest, they capture him. Yudhishthir comes to know that this Duryodhana has got captured. So he calls Bhima and Arjuna and says, go, get him released. And they are very angry, say, why should we go? For what all they have done to us is good, let him get captured, let them do whatever they want to do with him. He says, no, go release them and come. They obey, they get him released and come, they bring him. Yudhishthir sends him away, you go. Then Duryodhana and Bhim and Arjun, they asked Yudhishthir, why did you do this? He said, see, between Pandavas and Kauravas it is 100 versus 5. But as far as the world is concerned, we are 105. Nobody from the world can create a rift between us. The importance of the Kuru dynasty and the family remaining together is very, very important. So there the cause was that family honor and family must stay together. No matter what the other person has done in the family, family stays together. Internally you sort it out. You see in the world what all things happen. Because individual is so important. Other things are at stake. Country is at stake. Unnecessary. For one's own ego. What is good for that family at that moment should be done. What is good for that company at that moment needs to be done. What is good for the country has to be done. That is called sacrifice. That is called yajna. Where I let go of my individuality for the sake of the common good. So that way, dedicate actions to a higher purpose, and that is called as Yajna Bhavana. In that we keep the vision high. We saw yesterday that let there be selflessness, and that means reduce the self-importance and self-projection. If I am doing Karma Yoga and my self-projection and need for recognition and fame and glory has not reduced, that means I am not doing Karma Yoga. I am only doing Karma. One has to be very alert in that. The natural outcome of Karma Yoga is this, that a person, the ego pressure reduces tremendously. Person starts living in the state of love, in the state of giving, and is ready to sacrifice. He doesn't think twice. Because the cause is higher, can just sacrifice. And this can apply everywhere. In an institution you will see, even in an education institution you will find the growth of the children, the future of the children, the future of the country, all that is so much important and such noble cause. But one doesn't have that vision, then there is fighting happening for petty, small reasons. One should be able to put that aside and then do it for the cause. So that way keep the vision high, reduce the self-importance. How will that happen? Love the work itself. If a teacher loves the job of teaching, empowering the minds of students, that very work when one starts loving, that's the joy of Karma Yoga. Results are extra. Whatever will come, will come. Deep sense of security comes to a person who enjoys the work. That person doesn't crave, okay, somebody has to praise me, recognize me, give me a award, give me recognition, because I have loved the very work. Somebody who enjoys cooking, makes a new dish with so much of enthusiasm, finds a new recipe, does all that. That very joy of doing it, if one has enjoyed it, that itself is the beauty of it. So love that very work itself, because when a person does that, then one is connected to that source within, the source of happiness within. Otherwise one is depending outside. So love the very work itself and don't insist on a particular result. Please remember, the word is insist. The word is not expect. It is not possible not to expect a particular result. That is impractical philosophy. All of you have come here with some expectation only, that you will get some knowledge. Expectation has to be there. One can't say, chalo, time hai, abhi time pass ke liye baithenge, jo mila le lenge. That is very hanky-panky philosophy. But Bhagwan didn't work like that. He didn't tell Arjun, तुमको नहीं लड़ना है, ठीक है मत लड़ो, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Go away to the Himalaya. Sit quietly there, go. He is the one who ensured that dharma is protected. And his purpose on this earth is very clear. Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. In every yuga I take avatar for what? To establish dharma. Bhagwan didn't say, I am going to live that philosophy, don't expect any result. धर्म की संस्थापना हुई तो ठीक, नहीं हुई तो ठीक, I am anyway going to be born. Yes, unnecessarily we misinterpret the philosophy and then say Hindu philosophy is all impractical, we need to follow Western philosophy, we must have the killer instinct. Good, have killer instinct and kill yourself. What is it? Inspiration is required, not killer instinct. The joy of doing that work, a person who is inspired, you think people who are so successful, some of them are successful only because of killer instinct. Zakir Hussain loves to play tabla, that is a joy. There is no question of killer instinct there. You enjoy it. So if I have that very clear understanding, that results one will expect, there is no question about it. A student is studying and he is working towards a certain goal that I must pass in the exam, I must clear with certain percentage, I must go to that next level, and expectation has to be there. insistence need not be there. That is the issue. I always say these two words, expect and accept. That is the philosophy of the Gita. It doesn't say don't expect at all. That is absolutely impractical. How can you not expect? I expect you all to come here. Then only I will come. If I say पता नहीं कौन आएगा, कोई नहीं आया तो भी ठीक, मैं तो जाने वाला हूँ. Waste of time. One has to work with that expectation that okay, this is the purpose, this is the goal, I must work towards this. But insistence on that is what creates sorrow. Expectation offers particular result doesn't create sorrow. Dependence on that, insistence on that, and this must happen in this time only, in this way only, that creates the sorrow. So expect and work, accept also. That's why if you remember earlier, I had given you one formula for happiness. What is the formula for happiness? Accept it, Swamiji, we don't know. We live in the moment, we forget the past. You gave yesterday, we are living now.
That's the number of desire.
No, that is happiness formula.
Plus independence.
Not that one, that one. Number of desires fulfilled by number of desires entertained is a different formula. I had given that formula that acceptance plus independence is equal to happiness. Insistence plus resistance is equal to sorrow. This has to happen like this only, and then when it happens, whatever happens, I resist. No, I don't like this. This should not have happened. Do we have that in our control? We don't have the results in our control. Action is in my control, that I can control. But once I act, there is no control. I have to accept, and the beauty of this is that there is no other choice. Even after me resisting, what will happen? I have to accept only, no finally.
Acceptance plus
Independence. Acceptance plus independence is equal to happiness. There is no dependence on anything, and I accept whatever comes. That this has come, and that acceptance is not complacency. That acceptance is making a person completely free to respond 100%.
and insistence plus resistance.
Insistence plus resistance is equal to sorrow. Suppose there is a business loss. अभी रुपी is crashing, going down. थोड़े दिन ऊपर आया, अब वापस गया. अभी आज वापस steady हो गया. So what can I do? It is going. So I have to accept. Now this is the situation now. Onion price is going. I don't know where it has reached now. Now it's keeping the track of that also. Keeps on going up. So I have to accept, okay, this is the situation now. What do I do? Once I accept it, I know what is the next step to take. If I have to protest, I will protest. There is no question about that. If that's what is my duty and that's what is required, then I will protest. Because the whole war was fought for that. You see, Kauravas are like this. Finally, it had to be accepted that they are not going to give their land. Full stop. Now it's no more a war for property. It's a war for protecting dharma. Now the moment they accepted it, that we have tried all means of peace. Now we have accepted that nothing is possible for peace. So what was the solution then? Fight. It is not that acceptance when chalo karo to aise rehne wale to sab chhod ke chalega. No. The moment I accept it, my energy which goes unnecessarily in resisting stops. Then I know this is what I need to do, very objectively, not out of some psychological pressure. So that way, don't insist on a particular result. This we have seen in second chapter elaborately when we saw Karmanyevadika, so I won't go much into the detail of this. So if I don't insist on the particular result, then what do I do? Accept the result cheerfully, humbly, with gratitude. Well, this is what has come. And always remember, the power to do karma comes from the Lord. The capacity to think comes from the Lord. The capacity to feel comes from the Lord. Capacity to act also comes from Bhagavan. So karma also, the inspiration is given to us by Bhagavan. Karma phala also comes from Bhagavan. Because you and I cannot control karma phala. It comes from the Lord. If we are having this experience right now, no individual is capable of creating this experience. Each individual, they have their own karma. According to their karma, the environment is provided by the Lord. We have this place and we have this time and so many factors have to come together. It comes from the Lord. So whether we know it or not, it is anyway coming from Bhagavan only. So if I accept it that this is what the Lord has sent to me now, with Prasad Buddhi, done. Eighth point is, in Karma Yoga, a Karma Yogi always remains calm. Before the action, during the action, after the action. So that's another way to test whether I am practicing Karma Yoga or not. What is the state of my mind? Before the action, if I am anxious, if I am nervous, if I am scared, that means there is a certain insistence somewhere. Because that insistence only creates fear. That what if I don't get that? There is an attachment there. And many times it is natural, we will be nervous. Maybe an important, let us say something I have never done before now, to go and give a speech in front of people, or a very important occasion, something is there, then there will be a certain nervousness which will be there. If I introspect and I see the cause of that will be that I have a particular insistence that in this it must happen like this. I must create an impression, or I must be successful, or I must get this contract. There will be a certain insistence. And the anxiety comes because the future is uncertain, that I don't know whether this will happen or not happen. That's why that Shraddha and that faith, that whatever happens will happen for the good and I will be able to accept the result, whatever comes. Slowly helps us to overcome that anxiety. So Karma Yogi is calm before the action, meaning the energy of the mind is available to be directed to the work. When it is withdrawn from the result, it is available to be directed for work fully. In management language, they call it as be process oriented, not only result oriented. Every step I must be able to focus on the process. So if I do that, so I remain calm before the action. While doing the action, perfect integration. That's what we saw in the first day. Karma Yoga helps us to integrate the personality. Bring the body, mind, intellect fully here. This will happen if we have done the earlier one. I love my work, I will focus on it fully. And calm after the action. That whatever result will come, I will handle it. No anxiety. Because I am secure that there is no power in the world which can stop me from getting what I deserve. Nothing can stop. Absolutely nothing. And there is no power in the world which will give me what I don't deserve. If I don't deserve it, it is not there in my karma, it will not come, how much ever one tries. So if that much is understood, that Bhagavan gives in his intelligence, and he doesn't give with partiality, that he is my devotee, I will bless him more, he is not my devotee, I will bless him less. All that doesn't happen. The laws are created in this universe, it goes according to the law. So, that's why in the second chapter it was said, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Equanimity is called as yoga. Before the action, equanimous. During the action, equanimous. After the action, equanimous. Now see, this to practice is very tough. This cannot come by a technique. And whenever I get anxious now, start breathing deeply. Start counting 1 to 10. Tell myself, calm down, calm down. It may help, techniques may help, but that inner adjustment have to be done in the attitude, in my outlook of life. Then you see that calmness will be all the time there. So calm before the action, during the action, after the action. And last 2 points, know that you are only an instrument and not the doer. This is the height of Karma Yoga. If I have practiced these earlier points, my doership will reduce. Till now what we have seen is purify the intention. So the equation of karma is equal to action done by BMI plus intention plus doership. So till now I purified my intention, made it selfless, love the very work, acceptance, all that. But Karma Yoga doesn't stop with that. So lots of people say, Swamiji, we believe in be good, do good. Boss. Why so much of complication in life? Study Vedanta, study philosophy, study all this, then go home, reflect about it. Why? Be good, do good. It's a point to think about. That can I really be good holding on to my own ego? Because ego is a self-sustaining mechanism. It does not want to let itself go. It wants to arrogate everything to itself, which is exactly opposite of being empty. That when I am empty, infinite things flow through me. But when I have an ego, I am only blocking. So both go opposite direction. Hence, a person who understands this will reduce the doership. I cannot really be good after a certain point, holding on to my ego. Because the ego will come in between. Somewhere it will have the need for recognition. Somewhere comparison will come. Somewhere that selfishness will come. And the question itself, the first question that ego will ask is, you are being very selfless, you know. But what about other people? They are not being selfless. So they will take you for granted. So that is the condition that ego puts always. So how can I really be good holding on to the ego? I can't be good. I have to let go of it. Then the goodness flows. Uninterrupted it will flow. So here when we say that know that you are only an instrument. Each one of us is an instrument of the Lord. And when we work with that bhavna, that I am only an instrument, one of the best ways to relieve stress from life is this. Know that I am only an instrument. Yes. That's why Bhagavan tells Arjuna, Nimitta matram bhava savya sachin. Oh Arjuna, you are only a nimitta and you be an instrument. Don't arrogate doership to yourself. That even without you, all these people will die. Because I have already killed them. So you be an instrument and you get the glory. Bhagavan is very generous. He does all the work and we get all the glory.
Even if you consider yourself an instrument, because the action is being done through you, don't you still get attached to the karma phala? Doesn't it come to you still?
No. If the bhavna is I am only an instrument, Bhagavan is the doer, the karma phala will not bind me. Functionally karma phala will come, but that what we spoke about, that impression will not come, and that ego will get reduced tremendously. In fact, not only ego will get reduced, ego will disappear only. I'll give you a simple example. In our day-to-day life, suppose there is a company and there is a boss there, and the boss has to reply to a letter. So now we email or a letter, whatever. So then the boss is answering and the stenographer is writing. And then she types the letter and she brings it. Now who signs that letter? The boss will sign the letter. Now anything that happens, who will be responsible? Boss will be responsible. Though the typing is done by stenographer. The stenographer is only a medium. The doer is the person, the boss. Same way Bhagavan is the doer. So if I have that bhavna that everything is done by Bhagavan, please remember that attitude comes to us when I practice the earlier steps. Then every moment I am an instrument. It should not be When all the good things happen, I am the doer. When all the bad things happen, Bhagavan is the doer. That is convenience based. That will not help at every moment. And it will start with the good. It can start with a difficult situation also, no doubt in that. But typically it will start with the good. That when good things are happening, if I am grateful and I am able to feel that I am an instrument, Bhagavan is doing all this, it will automatically come to me at the difficult times also. So I am an instrument, the Lord is the doer. And last point is, don't attach your worth to the work. Because no matter what I do, whether I am successful, I am not successful, that is all in the eyes of the society, and there is a certain external perspective. I am divine, I am exceptional either ways, whether I achieve or I don't achieve. In the world, the question is always, you are judged by your performance. So let us remember this, that let my performance be judged, not me. Why do I judge myself based on my performance? Performance can be a yardstick to make me realize that okay, now I am slipping. I need to gather myself. It can only be a yardstick to make me aware of my own mind and its emotions. But I am much more greater than my performance. Infinite is my power, infinite is my capacities. Even if I don't believe in infinite, the performance is manifesting only a little bit of my powers. The values that I have, the culture that I have, the qualities that I have, capacities that I have are so much more. It may be that in that performance there were some factors because of which I could not express properly and I did not achieve that success which I should have achieved. So when people tell us, all that popular quotation, you will see failure is an event, failure is not you. It is a fact. It's an event. That one event, okay, you did not get what you wanted to get. How can I judge myself as a failure? How many people unnecessarily destroy their lives, spoil it just because they connect their work and their worth? How many children's life and innocence we spoil because we think, this child must be like this, then only the child is bright. And many times we judge the child's potential in a wrong way. Maybe the child is made for something else and I am putting the child in this and expecting the child to excel. It will not happen. But how much ever hard that child works. And the child, what does the child feel finally? And if that is not enough, there is a comparison also done. See your brother, how is he? He is so bright, you are so dull. Arey, why? So all that is because we connect the work and the worth. So even if we have to connect it, let it be only that one event, one work, one project. One should always remember that whether I achieve or I don't achieve, I am a human, I am deserving of all love, all happiness, all care. And I should give that to others also in the same way. You see the lives of some of the great people, they have been able to bounce back only because they had the faith in themselves. That this is okay, this I have not been able to achieve, so what? Swami Chinmayananda used to always tell us these two words to bounce back. So what? So what if that happens? So what? Bounce back. And other two words he used to say is never mind. Never mind, it's over, gone. Look ahead. These are all his powerful two-liners. Look ahead, never mind, so what? Because the depth comes from the knowledge of Vedanta. So many great people have failed, so-called failed miserably in some of the things that they have undertaken. Who was that? Edison only, no? 10,000 times? electricity, no, developed. 9,999 times he failed, and still enthusiastically is going on. So when somebody asked him, he said, how are you going on? He said, now I know 9,999 ways of how not to do it, so definitely this time it will be successful. That means what? He learned from every failure of his. He didn't brand himself as what a useless scientist I am. This sounds very nice to listen, but when we are in that spot now, then you even see the founder of this Apple, Steve Jobs, how many failures in his life? Failures meaning how many disappointments in his life? How did he bounce back? The inherent faith in oneself that I am much, much greater than all this and I have that faith in my potential. That doesn't go. So Karma Yogi, now this we are talking at personality level, please remember. Karma Yogi believes in Bhagwan, saying that Bhagwan is there with me, what is there for me to feel so dejected and disappointed? Never will a Karma Yogi feel disappointed. Whether result come, result doesn't come, the person is very, very clear. Vivekananda ji went to America and he lost his baggage. He was to address the World Parliament of Religions and he had a letter. Now, without that letter, they won't allow him. And in the ship he was going and he met a professor there and he struck a conversation and they became good friends and all that. And finally, when they reached America, whole baggage lost. Nothing is there with him. And he is in a new country. Doesn't know anybody there. No anxiety, no fear, nothing in his mind. He was happily sitting away in a goods train and chanting the verses from Mundaka Upanishad. Very calm and peaceful. And he had that faith that if the Lord has brought me here, that purpose is there, it will get fulfilled. So he started finding out about that professor with whom he had struck a friendship. He found out and met that professor. Professor also found him. And he took him to that World Parliament of Religion. He happened to be the head of that committee there. So a person who has that faith in Bhagwan, saying the Lord is there with me at all times. So it's not even about believing in my potential. Karma Yogi goes one step ahead. Says Bhagwan is there with me and inside me at all times. What is there for me to despair? And whoever draws from that inner source of strength, inner source of peace and happiness, person will move forward. So in this third chapter, this whole concept of yajna and all that which is given is a very beautiful concept of how Karma Yoga is to be practiced in life. And we will see a little more about this when we meet in the next month's session, where a very beautiful verse comes, this verse number 13 and 14. We will see more about that when we meet.
9, 10, 11.
So it's 8 only.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, my watch is fast. 8, 10 more. So we can do a little more. Or, some of you had questions on this. On what we have done, anybody has any questions? Yes.
I just wanted to know that when you speak about duties, how does one identify for oneself that what is really important as your duty? I mean, of course, towards family, society, whatever. How do you distinguish between what's important?
Now, there are different aspects which help us to determine what is my duty and then what is important. If it comes to the question of duty, there is nothing more important, less important. Duty is important, full stop. So, my stage in life definitely determines what is my duty. Whether I am a student, I am a householder, I am a relationship, married, not married, so many factors are there. My stage of life. Then my temperament. That what is my temperament? Now Arjun's temperament is to be able to protect dharma, to fight for it, to be a leader, all that, So it is his duty to do that. Somebody else may not have that temperament. So then that's not their duty. So what is my swadharma? That's what we call. In third chapter it will come that you should see what is your swadharma. And what is your temperament, what you are made for, then that is your duty. Somebody is made for art, somebody is made for engineering, somebody is made for being an architect, many different things. It's not only about profession. Profession is chosen based on the temperament. So what is my temperament? Based on that I have my duties. Third, also according to certain universal criteria. Wherever I am taking something, I automatically have a certain duty towards it. For example, if I am taking things from this country, I have a duty towards it. If I am taking things from certain people, it may be not things, it can even be emotion. So I have a friend and there is a nice relationship that we have. So there is a give and take that is happening because I am taking the time, energy, emotional satisfaction, all that is coming to me. So it is bounden duty then to reciprocate. Now if somebody says, no, I don't want to reciprocate, who said I should reciprocate? Will that not make me more and more selfish? Will that not make me go more and more into my shell? And is it not fair? Is it not unfair that when I want some things I am expecting but I am not ready to give? So there are universal value principles like that, that where I give, where I take something, I have a duty towards it. Hindu culture has given us so much. What are we even doing as Hindus? This culture is constantly under threat. I always say that people are worried about tiger becoming extinct, but people are not bothered that Hindu culture will become extinct. The oldest culture of the world and the most accommodative and beautiful culture, constantly under threat. It's not about the moment you say all this, they will brand you as a saffron person and Hindu fundamentalist and all that. It's all confusion in our head. You just think about it, 30 years down the line, what will this country be? If the Hindus are wiped out from this country or become minority in this country, Hindu culture won't survive in the world. And we are heading towards it. We don't even know how many percent of Hindus are there in this country today. How many percent Hindus are there? Any idea? 35? 35 hoga to it will be a crisis. Baba, we are already minority then. 80?
75, 80,
It was supposed to be 75, 80 before. We are today between 55 and 60. Because so many Hindu communities are going away from Hindu culture, citing themselves as minority, because unfortunately there is more support available for minorities.
So that is where that 35 to 40% is coming.
Now, ultimately, if you remove everything, then
If you remove that 40% of the Muslim population,
no, Muslim is not 40% in this country even today. It is not. It is 14 to 15% today.
but what about the unofficial figures which are
No, I am talking about unofficial figures only. I am not talking about your census. 30?
it is very much there.
30% of India. Then our calculation is very different because Dalits are so many. Dalit population is so high, Muslim population is so high. There are Christians which are there.
Also, Swamiji, Hindus are having lesser and lesser children as opposed to Muslims. And
So that's what I'm saying. There are many reasons for it. There are yes.
slowly it's declining.
So the point is, coming back to the main point, that I have a duty towards that culture. What am I doing towards them? So wherever I have got some things, I have a duty towards it to give back. Whether even so, we see that even a corporate world, they tell you that what is that corporate social responsibility is about that only. You take resources from the country, from the society, give it back in terms of whatever, schools and many other things. So duties are defined by that. These are certain criteria. And then of course your priority and your goal that you set. And this is what I want to achieve. Based on all these temperament and all that, you set a goal. Then there is a duty towards that. That makes me focused. Now based on that you can decide what is important, what is not important. Okay, so what will be our date for the next month?
9, 10, 11.